Welcome to the Flore Fantasy and Sci-Fi Lore. Today we are in Fallout talking about the ghouls of Fallout. We are going to talk about what exactly starts the process of ghoulification, how the U.S. began experimentations before the Great War when this happened, and some of the ghouls we will meet who were turned before the bombs dropped. We are going to talk about Van Buren and how a ghoul can be born. And we are going to talk about ghouls may be the best hope for mankind. We're going to be talking about Doctor Barrows, who is studying the ghouls as deeply as possible as he is one himself. If that is what you're looking for, this is the episode for you. Roll the intro.
Do you remember the first story that was so spellbinding? It drove you to break the rules and stay up all night to keep reading, keep watching, keep playing. So good, you forgot your life and lived there.
So good. The moment it ended, you asked yourself, what next?
Welcome to the Flore. Our goal is to take you back, take you deeper, to explore and understand more, and relive that childlike wonder.
Join us as we dive deep into humanity's greatest stories, no matter how they are told, through books, movies, television, even games.
One of us does an in-depth research on the topic. One of us is familiar with the topic.
And one of us knows nothing. So the right questions will always be asked and addressed for anyone coming into the topic, regardless of how much you know.
Enjoy another world, another adventure, another spellbinding story. Join us on the Flore. Welcome to the Flore. We are still in Fallout. We are doing an episode on ghouls. So this actually came from a listener write-in. The only thing I have is just the username they have. So this was V. Ladsender. And so he proposed this question to us via the Podbean platform. He said, I have questions for you concerning your new work on Fallout. How are ghouls created? My headcanon has always been that they were Nuka-Cola addicts who, after being exposed to the bomb, were mutated into what they became. Thoughts? All right, so we're going to dive into that, answer that as best we can, maybe fill in some of the gaps on how exactly he got to that headcanon as it is. So a ghoul is, sometimes they're called shufflers, sometimes they're called zombies. They definitely have a rotting, decaying exterior, whereas they are alive underneath. Some of them are fully conscious and intelligent, and others are wild, feral animals. So we'll go into all of that. So a lot of our knowledge on ghouls comes from someone known as Doctor Barrows. So Dr. Barrows appears in Fallout 3. He is a ghoul and a doctor. He lives in the, not the necropolis, the underground. So this is a city of ghouls in the capital wasteland. And he refers to them as like his own medical term that he came up. This is a necrotic post-human.
Interesting medical phrase there.
So, yes. So, and he finds dead ghouls. He examines them. He has a city full of live ghouls that he studies and examines. He catches feral ghouls and he studies and examines them. He is trying to learn and understand about ghouls.
His own condition.
His condition and his people, right? Not only is he the doctor, but he is the mayor of the town.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that ghoulification occurs in response to a massive dose of radiation exposure, right? Now, after this massive dose of radiation, something happens in their body and they begin a rapid regeneration to the point that it exceeds the radiation, the damage the radiation to their body is doing, right? They still need air, they still need water, they still need food, they still need sleep. But they need them in smaller amounts than ordinary humans do. Ghouls eat less, they drink less, they sleep less. And as far as is known in the wasteland, and we're almost 300 years out from the bombs, no ghoul has died of old age. And several of them are from before the bombs. So we have the ghoul in the Fallout TV series. He's alive from before the bombs.
I thought you said that there were ghouls before the bombs.
Okay, so that's actually the next point I'm going into. The first ghouls were created by the U.S. government before the bombs were dropped. Yes. So they were doing experiments with this process in preparation for what happens if the bombs drop. Can we create people immune to radiation through kind of just exposure therapy? And within the games, we will meet at least 2 ghouls who were transformed before the bombs dropped. One is a crime boss, Eddie Winter, and the other is a British spy, Desmond Lockhart. Both of them were aware that it was very, things were looking like that was going to happen. They were also aware of the ghoulification process that would make them both immortal and immune to radiation, and voluntarily underwent the process. So, like I said, one of the things that is always present in ghoulification is a massive dose of radiation. However, that can occur in a single heavy dose, like when the bombs drop, or it could occur in a slow, perpetual process. And the best way to ensure ghoulification is the slow process, monitoring for essentially ghoulification, right? This change in the human biology to rapid regeneration and accelerated regeneration in response to radiation. And if that process fails in a slow exposure process, they can be given Radaway, which will clear the radiation out of the system, and you can start the process. Whereas if it's, you get a ton of exposure instantly, there's no chance to reset the process because most people die, right, in response to that heavy doses of radiation. That is the standard response, is people just die when you get that much radiation, whether it be slow or fast. But within the slow process, there is an option to kind of reboot it by introducing Radaway. And so that's the process Eddie Winter and Desmond Lockhart go through to ensure that they don't die from radiation, but rather become ghouls. Right. And that was something the U.S. government had learned in their experimentation. Right. If you slow the process down, you can repeat it kind of indefinitely until you get the outcome you want.
So you're saying it's better to have tiny bites of yellow cake rather than eat the whole thing all in one sitting.
Yes, that's what we're saying. Yes. And so that seems to be the key characteristic of ghoulification: rapid regeneration and regeneration in response to radiation, right? So we know that in response to radiation, our DNA and cells to begin to mutate. And so it seems like this is just a possible mutation response that exists in humans, right? As all that DNA starts to mutate, this is one of the possibilities of the outcome there. And those who have that outcome survive, and those who don't die, right? Now, there's possible that it could also be tied to genetic traits as well, giving you an advantage. But I think it's more just like a random roll of the dice as those radiation particles rip through your cells. Which T's and C's and G's does it move around that you end up a ghoul as opposed to just dead?
And I think I read somewhere that, like, the ones who change during rapid radiation, their bodies are more decrepit and falling apart, whereas they are more whole.
Because radiation at high intensity levels can cause like burning and different things like that, it could do damage to the body. So any damage to the body that occurs before ghoulification stays, right? Whereas any damage to the body after ghoulification is healed, with the exception of the outer layers of skin, which always fall out. You lose your cartilage, so like your nose and your ears, and you lose the outer layer of skin. That happens to all the ghouls. But with the big doses, it can cause all kinds of burning deeper into the tissues, and that maintains. So ghouls usually that are, take that huge blast from a bomb or something, they have like burns, and it's much more severe. Whereas someone who's exposed to just kind of a slow drip of radiation, we get kind of like the ghoul look, right?
From the TV show.
Yeah. Or I think Hancock, the companion in Fallout 4, he's it's not as rough. You're seeing like muscles and tissues, but it's not like all burned up and scarred, and
not like the walking skeleton you see sometimes.
Yeah. So that's the big difference there, is like you're going to keep whatever damage has been done to your body prior to your transformation.
So I think one thing interesting to mention about that is in the TV show, the guy, he's got the broken foot, and the guy gives him the juice, and they, hey, we think you're a ghoul. What you're saying right there means he wasn't a ghoul, because his foot would not have fixed itself.
So there is a drug in the wasteland that Hancock takes, and it turns him into a ghoul. And it's possible that this dose that was given to this guy is a combination drug, maybe part stim pack, part ghoulification drug, to heal him all in one go. But the guy does say that you don't have to worry about radiation as an indication that he might, be a ghoul.
But I was also thinking that he took the FEV virus.
It could have been FEV as well. Yeah. And he would also not have to worry about radiation. So there's a lot of things that could be going on there. Could have been a ghoulification drug like Hancock took. Could have been, FEV. FEV actually makes more sense. That's what he took is the FEV. And we'll see. Maybe he turns into a super mutant. Maybe not. Who knows?
It'll be funny if he turns into a super mutant. A little scrawny guy comes out.
Okay, so we did mention that they can use radiation to heal. So the idea that ghouls are immortal and will not die is purely theoretical, right? Because the earliest ghouls come from before the bomb. So they clearly have an extended life, but we don't know if that is indefinite, right? It seems that way because they've just lived so long, but 600 years might be the longest a ghoul lives. So, and this is one of the many things that Dr. Barrows says. He says, we just don't know a lot. Like even Dr. Barrows in all his studies does not have big enough samples to say this is true of all ghouls. He has more case studies, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's universal. Like there could be a lot of other things going on. So another thing that ghouls can experience is feralization, right? So the frontal cortex of the ghouls seems to not benefit from the regeneration that the rest of their bodies have, like to the degree, like they can lose a limb and then they just like hold it in place long enough and it will just reattach. However, like I said, the prefrontal cortex and the frontal cortex, they seem to deteriorate, which leads to ghoulification. Now, there are several theories on how to stop or prevent feralization, right? One is that if you socialize, interacting with other people, the kind of things that we almost, look at how to prevent Alzheimer's are seen as how you can prevent feralization in a ghoul, keeping that part of your mind, on top of things and whatnot. Now, intense emotional trauma can also lead to feralization. And it's why most ghouls are actually feral, is that the intense trauma that leads to ghoulification usually triggers feralization in the same moment, right?
Interesting.
Like watching your skin rot off your body and all your friends die around you from radiation. It's traumatic, right? And usually they lose their mind right there. So most ghouls go feral right during the ghoulification process.
Right.
Other intense emotional trauma can cause it later on.
Again, the wasteland is crazy and full of trauma already.
But once again, we're dealing with case studies, right? We don't have a large enough sample to say this is what happens. Similarly, is that part of the brain perpetually deteriorating so that feralization is inevitable for all ghouls? Again, we don't know. Ghouls are new, right? Or is it just some ghouls, right, that eventually happens to? We do encounter a drug that will prevent a ghoul from going feral. Now, this is in 2296. We see this in the Fallout series, and it can repair the effects of feralization, right? You give it to a ghoul at any point, brings them back. It seems that this is clearly a post-war drug, right? Ghouls were so brand new before the bombs dropped that none of this has been created. You never encounter it in any of the Fallout games. And we do know that Shady Sands becomes a big nation. They've got industrialization, they've got science and research. So it seems that somewhere along the way, somebody discovered a way to prevent the ghouls from going feral, and they started manufacturing large amounts of it. So the TV show takes place around Shady Sands, so we assume that this probably came out of the NCR. Somewhere in there, that's where that was developed. There are some speculations as to what it is. It seems like the biggest fan theory is it's probably a blend of stim packs and mentats, because they are a mental stimulant combined with a healing agent, and taken to heal and re-stimulate the frontal cortex of the ghouls to keep them from going feral.
I dig that.
Yeah. So we see the ghoul constantly taking this, but again, we don't know if all ghouls will go feral. So he may not need to take this ever, whereas some ghouls, like, we definitely encounter that one who is going feral and he needs it, doesn't get it, and he goes feral, right?
It's like they're diabetics, but we're not sure if he's a real diabetic, but he's still taking insulin anyway.
Yeah. He's like, all my friends are diabetics. I'm taking this. I guess being a ghoul is like being pre-diabetic, right? It's like you're a ghoul, so you could, and if you take this, you won't. Like, what if I don't? He says, then you might. He says, but not for sure. Not for sure. It's a big maybe. He's like, we really don't know a lot about you guys.
You're new.
You're new. Yeah.
And you don't even know about it yourselves. So, we're really in the dark here.
Really, yeah. So. Okay, so we have been mentioning at the end of our episodes recently about the treasure room, how, as Aaron likes to describe it, in the Flore we go deep into things, but in the treasure room we kind of go wide. And we wanted to give people who have never been in the treasure room a little bit of a sample. So going forward, we'll probably be putting in little bits and pieces here. So here is a small clip from the treasure room. We hope you enjoy it and are interested in learning more in there. With Mark being stealth, we can kind of look at like the skills of Fallout and be like, maybe we can pick some of the other ones and be like, what if Mark had been made to represent Bard? Right. The immortal barter, wandering the waste, trading all kinds of weird gizmos and gadgets, right? As opposed to the mysterious stranger showing up and helping you battle. The mysterious stranger shows up with a little shop and be like, you want to buy some more crazy stuff? It does crazy stuff.
Maybe it'd be a bit like the cursed antique shop. Like these items that he's like, you really want this, but surprise.
Like, yeah, I know how shops work. You pay the money. They're like, well, no, it's a price you don't always see. Like, I know how tax works. I've paid tax before. It's not including the price. And no, you don't understand. They're cursed. They're cursed.
Yeah. I think that would be a fun way to do that.
Oh, that would be interesting. See, my thought was like you would just hope to encounter him and be like, sells the best stuff in the game, or I would say maybe even he doesn't take caps. You've got to trade stuff, and it's almost like a crafting. Like he wants specific things, right?
Yeah,
this and this and this, and be like, just random stuff you wouldn't even want in the wasteland. Be like, why do you want this crap? Be like, because I don't have it. When you've been around this long, I've got the nice stuff. I want the weird stuff. It's like entertaining for me to have weird, and it's entertaining for me to watch you trying to figure out how to get weird.
Yeah.
They have pretty much no sense of smell, so they can really eat almost anything. Ghouls often inhabit places where people don't want to. It's kind of dirty, filthy, stinky, because that doesn't impact them, right? They don't have skin to feel the grit of the dirt. They don't have a sense of smell, so they don't care if it stinks. It enables them to live in these really squalid areas without being bothered by it. And I think that might be why you see so many ghouls living in squalor, is because it doesn't bother them.
Right, and humans won't live there.
Yeah, and it keeps the smooth skins away. Yeah.
Just live where smooth skins don't want to live, and they'll leave you alone.
So as much as there is theory that socialization can help stave off the feralization process, we do encounter several ghouls who have spent massive time in isolation and don't go feral. Billy Peabody spent 210 years in a refrigerator, no food, no water, no air, and didn't go feral. Coffin Willie was buried in a coffin for several months. Woody was exhibited as a mummy for several weeks without food or water. And so a theory begins, again, we have 4 examples of case studies. that is there may be a possibility that ghouls enter a hibernation state, where their need for food and water essentially disappears, even air, right? With Billy Peabody. Within that state, we don't see the deterioration into becoming feral that we do in other ghouls, because during these time periods, they don't have socialization. So again, that is just a theory based on the small sample size we have, but we don't really know. Their vocal cords are very damaged. They usually have kind of cracked and raspy voices. Ghouls have genitals. But in Fallout Tactics, we beat ghoul prostitutes, and you see ghoul, married couples and whatnot. So they do have functioning genitals, but they are sterile. However, in River City, in Fallout 3, we will encounter the story of Saint Monica. This is an unmutated child born to ghoul parents.
Yeah.
So this doesn't come out of nowhere. So after Fallout 2 was completed, they were beginning plans for Fallout 3. This was Black Isle Studios and Interplay. So this game was not going to be called Fallout 3. They were going to call it Van Buren.
And this is when it was still going to be that top-down squad base.
Yeah. So this is before Bethesda. So from Van Buren, we have Born Ghoul. And so these were our experiments done by a Dr. Sebastian that will enable ghouls to be born. Right. So it is possible that piece of, the story may still show up in other Fallout games. But like I said, so as we have mentioned in the past, we do pull from all the sources, the Fallout Bible, the content not included. And so it seems like there's kind of a through line from the Van Buren born ghouls to Saint Monica, who is that child born to ghoul parents, who is, not only is she born to ghoul parents, she's not a ghoul.
Which is crazy.
It does seem like you don't really see ghoul children. So it does seem that ghoulification does not prevent maturation. They still grow into adults.
Okay, right.
So, and there are a few ghouls who will tell us the stories of when they were children before the bombs. And we never get a solid confirmation. You were a child when the bombs dropped, became a ghoul, became an adult. But we do get that hint several times from talking to various ghouls who were, talk about their time as children before the bombs.
Gotcha.
So outside of feralization, ghouls can also become glowing ones. These are ghouls who have absorbed an immense amount of radiation, and they start to glow. Again, Dr. Barrows gives us information on this. He is once again hypothesizing that for some reason the bloodstream in ghouls stops filtering out radiation, which then allows it to accumulate indefinitely, thus creating a glowing ghoul.
The antithesis of the water you drink during the day. He shines at you in the night, right?
Yeah. So glowing ghouls will heal all the ghouls around them through the radiation they give off. Most of them are feral, however, not always. The first glowing ones we will encounter are in Fallout 1 within Vault 12. If I remember correctly, we go in there to get the water chip, and the glowing ones do not attack you immediately, but they're not entirely coherent either. They can't really communicate very effectively with you, but they're not necessarily hostile unless you take their water chip without permission, and then they will turn hostile. So if you've been approved to take the water chip, they're cool with it, but otherwise they will attack you.
It also seems like these are the most eco-friendly ones, right? They absorb the radiation and keep it inside.
No, they radiate it out, right? They put out radiation all around them all the time. Like, a lot of civilization do not like ghouls, but they really don't like the glowing ones. Like, no, you can't be here. You're hurting us.
Poisoning everything.
Everything, yes. So, however, there are 3 glowing ghouls that we meet that are intelligible, that will talk to us and have conversation. The first is Jason Bright. He has encountered a lot of prejudice towards ghouls and has reached the conclusion that between all of that prejudice for the humans still living, the fact that the resource wars basically raided all of Earth's major resources, the best thing for them to do is just get on a rocket ship and fly to another planet. And unlike the concerns of humans needing a multi-generational ship, they're ghouls. They can just go, right? They can spend 200 years in a spaceship and still be the same people who arrive.
They are the ones they need for the spaceship.
So the problem is there's no reproduction when you get there, unless you look at the experiments of Dr. Sebastian from Van Buren, which, right, you bring those and then you can birth ghouls on the new world with his science experiments, right? Like that's really the best plan for humanity, right?
That's the move.
That's the move. Yeah. That is how you do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Wait until the Enclave finds out.
They're going to be ticked. He's like, that's it. Ghouls got to die. Ghouls got to die. We didn't
all ghouls are communists now.
They're trying to steal our planets before we get there. So that's Jason Bright. We'll also meet Oswald the Outrageous. He believes that his ability to heal ghouls is an actual form of magic. Yeah. And then the last one we meet is we meet him in Fallout 2. This is Hank. He's an engineer at a power plant. He goes in and manages everything within like the reactor core. And that probably has made him glowing, on his work there. But he can communicate and talk to you as well. Discrimination against ghouls. So the first time we encounter this is way back in Fallout 1. This is actually cut content. So initially there's a lot of prejudice against ghouls in the hub, and there's a quest line through Harold to resolve that. But it is something we encounter fairly often. Once we get into Fallout 2, there is a group of ghouls up in a city called Gecko with a power plant, and then there is Vault City, and they hate the ghouls, partly because their reactor got damaged, and now it's leaking radiation into the water that's going downstream to Vault City. They hate them. So they want you to wipe out those ghouls.
And the ghouls are like, this isn't a big deal. It's just spicy now.
It's just well, they're like, we need to fix it so we're not poisoning their water, right? The ghouls are good guys, right? And they're led by Harold, who looks like a ghoul. And everybody's like...
Harold the Immortal?
Harold the Immortal, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're good. And in the first one, ghouls, like I said, even Harold is fairly kind of seen as kind of a freak, like this weird dude. Most of the ghouls hold up in the Acropolis, and they don't like to interact with people. In Broken Hills, a mutant by the name of Marcus, he used to be part of the Master's army. He'd clearly not been exposed to mutated FEV because he's fairly intelligent. So after the Master dies, he goes on to start his own city where he tries to make it welcoming to everybody, ghouls, humans, mutants. And so as you walk around Broken Hills, there's everything around there. And then there's like a secret group of humans who hate everything else and they want to kill them off. And the mutants don't really care for anything except their own kind. They're like, we're the master race. They're dumb as rocks. But Marcus is a good guy, and he's built this city. He built it with a human. Their story is that they were fighting, him as a super mutant, the human in power armor. And after a couple of days of fighting, getting nowhere, they just decided, this is dumb,
Yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah. So within the NCR is around for, almost 200 years. Or I guess Shady Sands through the NCR, you've got over 200 years there. They go through various phases on how they treat ghouls, but eventually they are given citizen status. Within the NCR, particularly in the military, they're treated very well because usually they're very experienced. They can also do special missions that regular humans can't without some kind of chemical assistance, right? There's even there are a few areas that are heavily irradiated, guarded by ghoul-only squads because they're the only ones who can be there.
Oh, also, if you ever want to get a nuclear reactor going, ghouls would be a good way to go.
And it seems very likely that because of the NCR military's heavy reliance on ghouls for, protecting specialized areas and going on special missions that involves exposure to heavy radiation, it's very possibly that is where the ghoul drug to prevent fertilization comes from. The military did not want to lose, you've got a soldier with 170 years experience you don't want to lose that guy to going feral. And so this drug very likely came out of the NCR military trying to maintain a hold on these assets. And then finally, the Brotherhood of Steel's view on ghouls very much depends on time and place. So the Brotherhood can be seen as three different groups. You have the West Coast Brotherhood of Steel. Then we have the Chicago Brotherhood of Steel. And then we have the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel. The East Coast Brotherhood of Steel is very much purist, right? They do not want synths. They do not want ghouls. They do not want mutants. The Chicago Brotherhood of Steel, they were headed all the way back east, knowing, with all of their knowledge and archives, they know that the East Coast of the United States, a lot of technology, a lot of research, a lot of advanced weaponry, that was the central hub of the U.S. military, definitely somewhere they want to go. And an attempt to go there, the first group that attempts to go crashes in Chicago, in the Chicago area. Their numbers are massively depleted through the crash. They're struggling and wounded, and they completely revamp the recruitment process. They take in ghouls, they take in tribals. They are desperate. They will take in anyone. And they start to rebuild right there, and that definitely shifts the course of them. Now, another group, not having heard back from the group that was supposed to arrive on the East Coast, the West Coast sends another group that will eventually reach the West Coast and become the Brotherhood of Steel that we encounter in Fallout 4. Whereas the Brotherhood of Steel we encounter on the West Coast doesn't seem particularly anti-ghoul, but they're very pro-human, right? Whereas, by the time we get to that East Coast Brotherhood, they are not very tolerant. And that this may be the way this is kind of how the West Coast Brotherhood is portrayed in the show as well, because, it's been 100 years since we interacted with the Brotherhood on the West Coast by the time we get to the TV show. So they seem to have picked up these very anti-mutant ghoul attitudes that we see on the East Coast as well. And those two factions may be connected now, but like I said, the Chicago faction definitely in need brought them in. And I think, if you have ghouls and mutants climbing up the ranks in the Brotherhood in Chicago, they're going to influence choices and, probably not going to be forced out in the same way. So I imagine that if the Brotherhood of Steel from the Chicago area encounters one of the other factions, it might be a war, right? You might have a civil war between these factions because of the way the Chicago has embraced everyone.
Interesting theory. Yeah, so I can see that.
So finally, back to this, people who drank Nuka-Cola like crazy.
Right.
So we do know that, so Tim Kaine specifically said, right, Coca-Cola had Coke in it. So Nuka-Cola has ... very much be like, you fill in the blank. It's got nuclear radiation in it. We know that exposure to radiation is what can eventually lead to ghoulification. And drinking Nuka-Cola would be a very slow way to do that. So I think it's probably the safest way that some people may have moved into ghoulification. And it's possible that some people had reached ghoulification through heavy drinking of Nuka-Cola before the bombs dropped, but just didn't know it yet, right? They hadn't started to rot off their outer layers yet. So
interesting.
Hopefully that answers his question and just fills us in on ghouls in general.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. We have learned that many of our fans are only interested in some of the worlds we cover. The podcast feed is just a list and we have no control over that. But if you go to either the Patreon site or YouTube, there are collections and playlists that can easily access all the things you're interested in. On the Patreon site, there are even tags to hunt down even more specific things. Everything that is free in the podcast is still free there. It's just a better organization of the episodes. We have covered D&D, Baldur's Gate, Cyberpunk, Dune, Fallout, the origin of comics, DC and Marvel, Aliens, Predator, Godzilla, King Kong, The Witcher, and more. And if we haven't covered something you love, let us know and we can add it to the list.